Yes, fans, it's Spencer German, Spencer Davies with you. A little Spencer squared action after the Cavaliers 122-108 win over the Raptors here at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Happy to be along with you as we recap it all, talk about it with you here from the Fieldhouse, which Spence and I were trying to do this from the court, and then they turned the lights out on us. So we were a little bit later than we expected. But hey, we're still here, and we're still ready to talk about what was an awesome win for the Cavs to get to 17-1 on the season now.
Pretty crazy. And yeah, the lights went out, and luckily we didn't start the show, because if that would have happened, that would have been a Home Alone type situation. I don't know what we would have done. Luckily, we do have your spotlight here. It's making us look pretty good. We're right behind us is the Cavaliers locker room and all their good stuff in the side room. So yeah, no, it was a good win for them, even though there were some hiccups there in the third quarter. And I think we're going to talk about that and some of the response runs that they've had. But I mean, it's kind of getting nitpicky when you talk about a 17-1 team. Kenny coming flat out and saying, yes, I am surprised, and players saying, not surprised about the play, but about the record. Yeah, that's an accomplishment that these guys are probably going to never forget.
I think what Donovan said sort of was the most poignant, where he was just like, I didn't necessarily think we'd be 17-1 to start the season, but I thought that we had this in us. And I think that's probably a general consensus from the team in general. And they've certainly earned this record with the way that they played. They've been fantastic. We all wondered, okay, the first loss when it comes, how are they going to respond? The 2 games since have been awesome. I mean, Ty Jerome goes off for 29 the other night to win the game immediately after against the Pelicans, and then comes out today. That was a career high for him. This was his second highest, back-to-back games where he's basically posted his 2 career highs in points with 29 and now 26. Spence, we've talked so much about Ty Jerome. There's not really there's not a lot many more superlatives we can put on it, adjectives to describe him. He's been fantastic. I don't really know what else to say about it, but it's kind of like an awkward, I don't know what to do with my hands type of situation. I really don't, though, because he just keeps going out and balling. And I thought Kenny summed it up so well. The guy worked so hard during camp and leading up to the season, and then he kind of laid it out first 5 games, he's still playing well. And then it just keeps going and keeps going. And we're at some point he's going to come back down to earth, right? And it's what if this is just who he is now? And he's blown his teammates away, but they also knew the hard work that he put in, it would pay off in some capacity. He's really feeling himself. I mean, somehow, some way, the Warriors let this guy get away, and now he's here in Cleveland and absolutely balling in the system and in the rotation, and the way that Kenny Atkinson is using him. It's been fantastic to see. And I'm not going to bank on there being an end in sight for him. Who's going to take that chance right now? Who's going to make that bet right now? He might just keep being this role player off the bench who, can we even call him a role player anymore? The dude feels like he's legitimately an important piece of this team. George Niang, you talked to him the other night, called him the core 5. He said they should make it a core 5, and he's the 5th person. He's been phenomenal. Sort of the unsung hero of this team, I think. And that's all due respect to the rest of this group, because they've all been great in their individual roles. But man, oh man, we can't say enough about Ty Jerome.
Stabilizer. This is the guy that comes out into the court, and if there's any kind of gunky play from the starters, he comes in and just kind of organizes and get these guys ready and in the right spots. Defensively, nobody is safe from the Ty Jerome poke steal from behind. That guy is just getting his hands all over the ball. Defensively, he's in the right position. Offensively, he's playing freely.
Yeah.
There was a freedom that he had the other night against the Pelicans that he was talking about. And even though he might not have that same shot type of volume, tonight you can see that he's still looking to go into his own shot, looking to make the right next pass, looking to set up his teammates. How many times did I tap you on the shoulder today and say, just look at him when he goes into the middle and draws all that attention, and out he sprays it to a Donovan Mitchell or a Darius Garland. It's interesting that you bring up the role player thing, because I think there are going to be times this year where Ty Jerome starts as the 3 on this team, dependent on matchups, of course. Isaac Okoro came back tonight, looked really good, by the way, defensively, and did a lot of good stuff. But that just goes back again to the depth of this team. But Ty, everyone was joking, Kobe Altman included, talking about how he was the MVP of September. And now you're looking
he might be the MVP of October and November.
Both. right? I mean, it's
Can
crazy.
you get December as well? Can you just end the year as the MVP?
You know what?
of this team?
This just might be the end of 2024 for Ty Jerome, the way he's playing and the confidence in which he's shooting, whether it's catch shoots or pull ups. He has a perfect partner in Jarrett Allen when he's on the floor with him. I love when he shares the floor with Darius and Donovan because there's just such a dynamic with all three of them on the floor where all the ball handlers can play make, can help get each other open, and also just put pressure on the rim. And I think Ty doesn't get nearly enough credit for the pressure he puts on the rim and the way that he's able to use that slow step.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like the scoring is a big part of this, right? Like 29 points the other night, 26 tonight. But it's more than that. I mean, he had 4 steals tonight, 5 assists as well. He blocked a shot, I believe, on the stat sheet too tonight. Like he's impacting the game in so many ways. I have a story up at Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, and in that story, yes, shameless plug. In that story, I wrote like if you get caught looking down at your phone like Spencer's doing right now because you're reading a text or you're sending a tweet or whatever, you might miss that. Like after the Cavs make a bucket in transition, he's got these quick hands and he's stealing a pat or stealing the ball and then pushing it forward to like Evan Mobley or something on a breakaway for a dunk. Like it's just every up top. You can't take your eyes off the floor because Ty Jerome is one of these players that, like, no matter what side of the phase of the game they're in, if they're transitioning the defense or they're playing on offense, he's making some sort of play, and it could impact, like, then the next bucket Cavs make. It's just crazy, man. Like, we've been raving about Kenny Atkinson's system and how fast they're playing, but, like, tonight it was on full display, and I think Ty Jerome, like, really just sums up well how that entire group is like he sort of epitomizes what the goal is for this team.
He's the catalyst of that unit, I think is a good word to put it. And that I think is so important when, again, you don't have the guys that are on the floor who can stabilize like he can at the moment. It's just, you can tell when he gets into the game, everybody just kind of gets engaged and gets going on the defensive end. And that's, I think, a huge part of all this. And it's not just Ty either. Like, he does the entire thing. It's a really solid, kind of impact that he has on all of these guys. And, you mentioned the looking down at the phone thing or tying your shoe or just taking a glance off the TV if you're at home. Don't do it because you'll miss something. These guys,
they might as well not even blink.
You just don't blink.
You should get something to pry your eyes open and just watch the Cavaliers at all times. And then when the game's over, watch the game again.
It's crazy.
Don't sleep. Don't do anything.
Yeah, just stay awake the entire time.
Stay awake and watch us at midnight, like you're doing right now.
Maybe that's a good kind of segue into what I want to talk to next, because these guys weren't completely satisfied about this game tonight.
Yeah. They talked about the defensive effort, and Kenny even said, like, they got to be better. He knows they're a good defensive team.
Yeah.
But, like, it's funny that they said that because the Raptors' offensive rating was still like 104, which isn't very good for those keeping score at home or who don't know. Like, that's not a very good offensive rating. So even on a night where they didn't feel like they played well defensively, they still, like, shut them down and, like, limited what they were able to do. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about, like, sort of lucky shooting, unlucky shooting for the Raptors in that regard. And that was probably part of it, but it still was like, okay, you didn't play your best defensive game and you still won by what? Math is hard. 122, 108. What's that? 14?
14 points. Okay. Yes. Good job. So with the shot luck, for me, is I saw a lot of good looks that RJ Barrett had. You had a number of looks that Scotty Barnes could have had from the outside. Grady Dick also has been shooting the ball really well this year. Like, some of those were not going down for them. And that was some from the corners too, that I think Davies Mitchell had a number of good looks that didn't go. So that, I think, was also interesting. And then you look on the other side, it goes 14 of 26 for the Cavs, but then you're in 6 of 23 if you're the Raptors at some point there through the third quarter. And that probably is something where, you play the Celtics and you're probably giving up almost the same amount of looks, or probably more, honestly, because they're Boston and they're burying you, right? Like, so variance is a big part of this. Kenny talked about it. Go look on the YouTube channel and the pregame press conference. Really good stuff, really good evergreen stuff. Shot variance is very much a part of this. And the Cavs were shooting the lights out all, for the most part. But they just kind of were able to get a little bit of shot luck in addition to that. But the defensive issues that Kenny was talking about tonight had to do with the fouls.
Yeah, and that continues to be a big discrepancy there. Donovan talked about that after the game. Like, he just kind of assumes at this point they're not going to get the calls. And, maybe there's something to that. I also think part of it is like they're taking a lot more jump shots. They're not always driving to the basket, so they're not always going to get those calls when you're not doing that. We'll see how that changes or evolves as the season goes on. There's always that idea in the NBA that you got to kind of like earn your fouls type thing. So I don't know, but you'd think by now, like guys like Donovan, Darius, whatever, would kind of have earned it. But yeah, he kind of even said like during the game, he told his guys like, stop complaining about it because they're just not going to call. So we just got to do what we're going to do.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, Kenny was talking about how a lot of the defensive fouls that they got were real fouls. Like they were, guys have their hands out. Like Kenny, like he always does at these press conferences. He shows you. He's like,
he's trying to coach us up.
He puts his hands up. He's like, this is what we got to do, guys. Like make sure you don't get caught reaching. They're reaching a lot. Ty Jerome was even in the locker room talking about that. Is like some of them, like the one that he had on RJ Barrett, his hands were, it was a foul. Like it was a weird drive, but he also like was a little too aggressive on him. So those are the things they have to work on technique wise. I know we talked about over helping a little bit on the perimeter closeouts and making sure that, yes, you are protecting the rim, but you're not making yourself vulnerable for perimeter usage there on the outside. But again, that's something that they've wanted to work on. And especially, I think it was Fedor who brought up that the Raptors for this game had an offensive rating of 104, which is not that great in today's NBA. Yet still, the Cavs are being nitpicky about their defense and, probably their third quarter. So it's a good sign that these guys are not satisfied after that. And it was interesting to me, too, because Kenny said that even though the days off were good, they felt a little bit rusty. They felt like one step off. Their timing wasn't great, maybe a little bit in some of these sets. So, take that as it may. And there's no, back-to-backs here for a little while. And they've got another couple days off before they face Atlanta on Wednesday.
Yeah, and we'll certainly look ahead to that one here in a second. I did want to throw out a couple other things. First of all, I sort of said this to you during the game. I sometimes forget that Donovan Mitchell was even like on this team, and which is weird to say because like him and Ty were tied for the team high in points today. They both had 26 points, as we alluded to with Ty. And there was a stretch there late in that game where like Donovan took over. He had like 7 straight points, hit a couple threes. He was great. But yeah, like the reason I say I forget he sometimes is on this team is because of how much it's the offense we've been talking about, right? Like they just utilize each other so well. Everybody's so unselfish. Donovan is so unselfish that he wants to see his other teammates eat. He wants to see his other teammates perform at a high level. They share the ball so well. They do so many different things together so well. It's like sometimes he like has to remind me with like a stretch like he had with those 7 points that he's still on this team because he almost feels like a role player. And I mean this in the most endearing way possible. It's like a compliment to Donovan that he just plays this unselfish style of basketball and he still is contributing. He's still making plays and he still is like a go-to guy when you need him. But like sometimes I forget until like he really needs to step up and do something that he isn't like that he is this superstar player on this team that they have. And that's like it's just an extra luxury for them to have on this roster.
His selflessness is a huge part of this group, and it gets other guys going. The other day at practice, Kenny called him the Evan Whisperer because him and Evan Mobley are on the floor together at all times, and like Evan handling it a little bit more. That's helping Donovan because he's going to have more juice in those moments now because the usage isn't quite as high. And you look at the way he started that fourth quarter, you mentioned it. He started out ripping off the first 7 points of the quarter after the Raptors cut it down to 6. That's extremely like that's an extreme example of what I mean. Like he's going to have more get-go in that moment because he's rested and Kenny's going deeper into the bench, but also he's having other guys handle, and that's really important because when Donovan gets on a heater, ain't nobody stopping that dude. He's going to be shooting threes. He's going to put his head down like a running back. That's what Kenny said at the press conference. He always loves to bring up these football analogies. It's interesting. But he's like, we just kind of went at him in the pick and roll and we were handing it off essentially to Donovan and with the lead blocker. So he was getting to the rack. That's the kind of stuff that Donovan's able to do. And just because he's so muscular and so strong getting to the hole, he can draw fouls, he can finish. And then also the factor that he's now catch shooting And in addition to his pull-ups, like, he is a 3-level scorer, no doubt. And that kind of ties into my last point as well, is that these Cavs, whenever these runs happen, there hasn't been too many adverse situations with this team this year, but when another team cuts their lead down to like 6 or 8 and you feel like it's a game, boom, Cavs just go on this psycho run, and immediately
it's very like Warriors dynasty like.
Yeah.
They, like anytime you get close with them and like you thought you had a chance, then they would just like bury you.
The fans call it a Cavalanche, whatever you want to call it, but it's just
I
like
like that better.
it's insane though, because like you get it down to 2-3 possessions and then they just hit you with this right hook.
Yeah.
And you know, the team, I was asking them about it. Like, Ty Jerome said that's a sign of maturity. Evan said that, you know, it's good to see that, but our next step is to make sure that we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And then Jarrett immediately said, well, that means that we're like letting our foot off the gas, and that's something that we have to correct. So I thought it was interesting to hear the perspectives and the different kind of views that these guys had on that subject, particularly because response runs are big. You're going to look for that stuff when you go towards the postseason. You're going to lean on those habits when you're in April, but you don't want to have that be a regularity, even though the game is a game.
Well, I do think to Ty Jerome's point of it being a maturity thing, like I think it's the sign of a good team when you know like a team might get back into it. Basketball's all about runs, we know that, but you're able to then be like, okay, we got to stop this. Let's get it going here, and you don't let it spiral or snowball into something worse. So I do think that's certainly true. The other thing I was just going to throw out there, I thought Jarrett, since you mentioned his name a couple times, he looked like the couple days off was massively helpful for him. 23 points, 13 rebounds. We had talked about it after all the back-to-backs they had played. He was looking a little tired at times. He wasn't, you know, there was the one game where Kenny Atkinson deployed the small lineup, as we talked about a bunch of times. And took Jarrett Allen off the floor completely for like the fourth quarter. He couldn't hang because he was getting a little tired, and that's okay. Like, the style of offense they're playing, you know, your conditioning's got to be at a certain level. Bigger dude like that, like, sometimes it's going to catch up with you when you're playing a bunch of back-to-backs.
Rim running and all that.
Right. But tonight, he looked like he was back to being like spry Jarrett Allen, making plays. He had a nice poster on who was it?
I think it wasn't Pirtle.
No, I think it was Pirtle.
Was it Pirtle?
Yeah. Now that you bring it was Pirtle. It was early in the game. But yeah, so just, I mean, again, he's we know how important he is. We know he's kind of the anchor of this defense and this team. And to see him kind of back out there feeling like he was athletic again was good.
Well, here's the thing, too. You know, I was trying to tell people that Kenny continuously brought up that fatigue when it came to Jarrett.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people just kind of look at that as an excuse. And this is a prime example of how it's not an excuse. If you're a big and you're running at the pace that Kenny is having these guys play at, and you're still having to exert all that energy on the defensive end and on the glass and all of that, like, it's going to take a toll.
Yeah.
So look, you get 4 days off, 3 days off, whatever it was, and get a little bit of time to recalibrate, go back out on the floor and absolutely dominate and do a pretty darn good job on the glass. I know that Pirtle ended up with 18 boards tonight, but it seemed like that caught Kenny and Jarrett off guard when they looked at the box score. But you know, that's going to happen with the fatigue and all that. Like, Jarrett, that is who we saw tonight. That is who Jarrett Allen is at his core. And then secondly, too, Darius Garland's first game back since the Boston game. Thought he responded really well in the third quarter. You know, got 8 points quick. I thought his vision tonight was excellent. Did a really solid job. That one poster you talked about with Jarrett, that was on a feed from Darius Garland, and that was through traffic. So good for him. And then good for Isaac Okoro, too. Did some really good things defensively in his first game back, too.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse tonight. I think we covered most of our bases here with this game. As Spencer alluded to, Cavs back in action on Wednesday against the Atlanta Hawks.
Home and home.
And then, they're on the road against them, right, on Friday. That actually is
afternoon.
That's an Emirates NBA Cup game, so that one's important because right now the Celtics kind of have the inside track to win the group. But the Cavs can still try to get in as one of those extra teams if they win these games and have a certain point differential. So it's an important game if the Cavs go for the Emirates Cup. And then we know the big one that everyone's circling, the rematch with Boston here. I guess technically now, because it's past midnight, it's less than a week away. But it was Sunday when we got here, so a week from this Raptors game that we were just recapping. So Certainly an exciting couple of stretch of games coming up.
He's going to ask me if it's a statement win.
I will if they win. I'm not trying to put any bad juju out there. I kept trying to taunt. I teased
I'm not seeing a frog around here.
I teased it. Yeah, I don't see the frog. I don't know if she stays out this late. But I teased that they were going to win, and I was trying to get some good vibes so that we could get you to say it, and then they lost. So I'm going to wait until it actually happens, and then we'll get you on camera and we'll just put you on the spot. So,
cheap podcast plug, by the way.
We'll see how it goes. But no, guys, as always, I encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, review all of our content over at the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI YouTube channel, where you can find more of Spence and I, but also John Rudder, who's jumping in on stuff, and post-game press conferences from tonight, from other games, practice press conferences from yesterday, all kinds of great content. Spencer's on the machine. He's putting them all up there. He's grinding. He even put the Donovan Mitchell video up tonight that I actually shot. So he's working overtime. And also
shout out to Megs, by the way, Anthony Meglin for helping out.
He stayed up late to make sure this could happen after being at a wedding this weekend and probably is pretty tired. But yeah, and obviously we encourage you as well to follow along with all of our written content over at Cleveland Cavaliers on SI or si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. I just put a story up a little over like 45 minutes ago or so, all about Ty Jerome, what his teammates had to say about him afterwards, what Kenny Atkinson had to say about him afterwards, where this came from for a guy that obviously missed all of last year with an ankle injury. So be sure to check that out and check out all of our written content as part of the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. For Spencer Davies, I'm Spencer German. We'll be back with more coverage of your Cleveland Cavaliers here down the road. Keep it locked, and happy Thanksgiving.